In this video, traders, I want to talk about why marking your charts up by hand I think is way more effective than using a little tool. Stay tuned. Hey traders, warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining me. All right, so whatever you use, TradingView, you Sierra, MT4, Ninja, TradeStation, all these kind of platforms, nearly all of them have got built-in scripts, simple scripts that say, hey, can you mark in these levels for me? And maybe you're using it to do floor trader pivots. Maybe you're using it to do the prior high, open, low, close. Maybe you're using it to do all these kind of things. Static lines I'm talking about here, not necessarily VWAP or moving averages, which need some sort of calculation to be done regularly. So these static lines, many people will go, okay, I've got these tools and I'm going to have the floor trader pivots and have this and have that. And it's great because it feels like it's done the work for you. And to a certain extent, that's all right. But what we lose when we use these tools, and by the way, I'm a big fan of tools and automating certain parts of the process. If you can have a tool that gives you an idea of a location to initiate a short or something, I'm a fan of that. But there's certain times when I think that you really need to feel the market yourself, and you only get that feel by doing stuff by hand. So I don't use tools for this. I always mark these levels on by hand. So what do I mean? So imagine you are a day trader. The important levels for you are going to be the prior high, the prior low, the prior close. Open, not so much for me. I'm more interested in the current day's open. So you can get a script that does this for you, but you lose out on feeling what that means. And so every day, if you're trading, you should come in and go, right, there's my prior high and draw a manual line in. There's my prior low, let me draw a manual line in. And there's my close. And different colors, and have a systematic process and go, okay, I'm going to use the low is green, the high is green, the low is red, I'm going to use a dotted red for the close, whatever you want to do. But by doing that, as you're putting it in, you can ask yourself the question, what is the significance of this? The trouble is when we just have it drawn on our chart, and we open the chart and we just see we know what they are, but we miss the nuances, and the nuances where the edges, and the edges where we can make our money. And so when you draw it manually, you go, okay, there's the highs, and immediately you should be going, actually the close was kind of in the midpoint, right? And actually it was a decent support, is the resistance level from there, and that high didn't last long at the high. We did more work to the downside than we did. Okay, so that probably means that actually if we do drift up on that high, I might look to still, you're getting the subtleties and the nuance of what these levels mean. Now I'm not saying you don't get that with auto when you put it on automatically, and of course you can do, but I think you fall into the trap that all these lines are drawn on for you and you don't really understand. You know what they are, but you don't understand the importance of them. Because sometimes levels aren't important, right? If this market had closed up near highs and done all the business near highs, I don't really care about those prior days low, because I'm pretty much assuming that we're going to pull back and rip through that high because of the strength of followed day for day 2, day 3 play. And so drawing it manually helps you to build this picture in your mind of what's actually happened yesterday. What are market participants feeling? What does the close mean? How valuable is that information? What was the range like, this and the other? Even if you're using your floor trader pivots, like your pivot points, your R1, S1, etc., I would still recommend doing them manually. The formula is very simple, and understanding then, wow, it's a massive range. That's why I've got a pivot point down here, we've got R1 here, and okay, what does that mean? And just doing this stuff by hand really helps. And I think, if you look back on some of the old traders from the 1930s style, they were marking everything by hand, probably because they had to, of course. Well, they had to, but that gave them a feel for it. If you look at some of the old tape books, like what's the guy that called himself Rollo Tape? I forgot the name of the book now. A little green book I've got on my bookshelf. You guys will remind me what it is. He would mark down or write down like 18 and a quarter. He would write down every print that came through on the tape so he could go back and visualize and see how it performed before it rocketed or when it reversed. And of course, that's a necessity because he hasn't got computers and stuff like that. But I do seriously think that the act of writing it, calculating yourself and seeing what that individual thing means rather than just getting it given to you. And imagine if you had an assistant who did it and said, here you go, here you go, here you go. And you go, oh, all right, thanks. You won't get the same thing as if you did it by meticulously. So it's the same thing with this. This computer assistant can go, there you go, there's your levels. All right, thanks. Whereas if you put them on, it didn't take very long, does it? You put them on manually, you put them on by hand, and you start to go, okay, I understand why it's important now, or it's not important. And then you start to generate ideas around it because you've seen, you've drawn it on, you've gone, okay, well that's decent, because actually I do think that I can fade that level. And I think it just creates an extra level. Now you might be like, yeah, I don't need to do this, it's not important. But I would say this, if your results aren't quite what you want, it's worth trying. Try it for 10 days and say, okay, it's cost me an extra 5 minutes a day, and hey, if it works, well, time well spent. If it doesn't, if you've spent 5 minutes, you're going, you know what, it doesn't make any difference to me, I don't feel it any whatsoever, I'm going back to auto. But for me, I do this manually, and there's a reason for that. And part of you can say, well, when you started trading, did you have access to? I didn't have access to all the tools we've got now, of course, and probably did do it manually. But it's not a habit thing. There's plenty of other stuff that I've taken on and gone, oh yeah, I'd love to. I have a little script that does this or this and helps me out and guides me with this and alerts me to this and that and the other. I use technology to improve my trading, so I'm not against that, but I still do this stuff by hand. And by hand, I mean still using the drawing tool. I'm not actually drawing it on by hand, not printing stuff on, drawing it by hand. At the end of the day, I still mark up my charts. That's a separate video. But before the day, I will kind of draw on the charts and draw the lines, do all this stuff, and have the important things and do all that manually, because I feel that I then live and I breathe that day, and I remind myself what happened yesterday, and I remind myself of the value of that high, the value of that low, all this type of stuff. Anyway, worth considering, guys. Less automation, more manual. To the next one, take care, bye-bye.